Spartacus was a gladiator. I mean, was he born a gladiator? No. Did he become emperor? No. Wait, what? Spartacus was a Thracian by birth, likely from the region that is now part of modern-day Bulgaria. He served in the Roman army, but he deserted? He escaped, but was captured and subsequently sold into slavery. That's why, but I mean, why is he the most famous gladiator in history then? Just a guy escaping from the army and getting caught doesn't sound very smart, does it? Maybe he didn't even get the gladiator title. Do you start to see my point here? Well, it is a bit more than that. Anyway, considering that he was Thracian, he was possibly white, or maybe a certain shade of who knows? In the Roman Empire, there was a wide array of colors, and it didn't seem to bother anyone, really. But the guy escaped from the army and got into a gladiator school and then escaped from the gladiator school and decided to make some fun out of the Roman Empire that was not really an empire at that time, but a republic. So Spartacus, at the age of 30 years old, more or less, started a journey that didn't end up very well. But did he ever become an emperor or ruled over Rome? I think I should tell you his story. So, Spartacus. Spartacus was born around 103 BCE in Thrace, a rugged region covering parts of modern Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Ancient writers described him as a man of intelligence and courage, culturally refined compared to most of his countrymen, and possessing qualities that made him a natural leader. Some sources identify him with the Medi, a Thracian tribe known for their resistance to foreign rule. Early in life, he served in the Roman army as an auxiliary soldier, but he eventually fell afoul of Rome. At the time Spartacus entered the Roman army, probably in his early 20s, around 80 BCE, Rome was governed as a republic, a system established after the overthrow of its last king, Tarquinius Superbus, in 509 BCE. In place of monarchy, Rome created a constitution with annually elected magistrates, most notably the two consuls, and a senate that controlled finances, foreign policy, and military matters. By Spartacus's lifetime, the Republic was the dominant force in the Mediterranean, having conquered Carthage in the Punic Wars and expanded into Greece, Macedonia, and much of Asia Minor. Thrace, his homeland, lay on the Republic's northern frontier. Rome exerted heavy influence there, often recruiting Thracians as auxiliary soldiers. In many frontier regions, these auxiliaries were raised through a mix of methods. Some men volunteered in exchange for pay, plunder, and the prospect of Roman citizenship after long service, while others were conscripted by local tribal leaders under Roman pressure. Plutarch describes Spartacus as of Thracian stock, and Appian notes that he had once served as a soldier before becoming a slave. This suggests he was drawn into the Roman military as part of Rome's system of incorporating conquered or allied peoples. Given that Thrace was not fully independent and faced constant Roman campaigns, it is highly probable that Spartacus's service was compulsory through tribal levies imposed by Rome, rather than a voluntary enlistment. Ancient writers disagree on why Spartacus fell out with Rome. Some claim he deserted his post as an auxiliary, while others suggest he took part in raids against Roman lands. But in either case, the result was the same. He was seized by Roman authorities, deprived of his liberty, and sold into slavery. He was purchased by Lentulus Batiatus, the owner of a gladiatorial school in Capua. There, Spartacus trained as a murmillo, a class of heavyweight gladiator. He fought with a broad rectangular shield called a scutum and the short sword known as a gladius. His bronze helmet and armor protected his head, legs, and arms, but his torso remained bare, exposing scars and tattoos. Although popular culture portrays him as a champion, the historical record is silent about his success in the arena. What is certain is that he survived long enough to play a role in one of the most dramatic uprisings in Roman history. Contrary to the popular image of gladiators fighting to the death in every contest, ancient evidence shows that most matches did not end with one combatant being killed. Gladiators were valuable investments for their owners, often costing the equivalent of years of a soldier's salary, and constant deaths would have been economically wasteful. Roman writer Seneca noted that skilled gladiators could control their blows, striking in ways that displayed technique, without necessarily killing their opponents. The historian Livy also records instances where fights ended with surrender rather than death, and inscriptions from gladiatorial schools indicate systems of training, discipline, and even medical care for wounded fighters, further proof that they were not treated as disposable. While executions and fatal combats certainly occurred, especially in special spectacles, the majority of gladiatorial games emphasized skill, endurance, and entertainment over simple slaughter. In 73 BCE, Spartacus and around 78 other gladiators staged an escape. Armed first with kitchen knives, they fought their way out of the school and seized a wagon full of gladiatorial weapons by chance along their escape route. Equipping themselves properly, they made for Mount Vesuvius, a defensible refuge with steep natural barriers. Along the way, they gathered runaway slaves and even free men who joined their cause. Spartacus emerged as a leader, along with two Gauls named Crixus and Enemus. Ancient writers disagree whether these men were his equals or subordinates, but together they commanded a force that quickly grew. At first, Rome dismissed the revolt as a minor disturbance. The Republic was already engaged in major wars in Spain and Asia Minor. A praetor, Gaius Claudius Glaber, was sent with 3,000 militia, not trained legionaries, to deal with the fugitives. Glaber besieged them on Mount Vesuvius, blocking the only road and planning to starve them out. Spartacus responded with ingenuity. His men wove ladders from wild vines, scaled down the steep cliffs, and launched a surprise attack from behind. Glaber's force was routed, and the rebels captured weapons and supplies, transforming themselves into a serious threat. Rome sent a second praetor, Publius Veranius, with greater numbers, but he too suffered defeat. Spartacus first crushed Veranius's lieutenants Furius with 2,000 men and Cassinius, who was nearly captured in his camp, before defeating Veranius himself. Spartacus even took the praetor's horse as a trophy. By now, the insurgent army swelled dramatically. Appian claims it numbered over 70,000, filled with slaves, peasants, and deserters, drawn by the promise of freedom and plunder. At this point, Spartacus reportedly wanted to march north, cross the Alps, and disband his men to return to their homelands. But his army, elated by success, refused. Some demanded to continue raiding Italy, while others dreamed of Rome itself. The disagreement led to a split. Spartacus led one force, Crixus another. This division would soon prove costly. In 72 BCE, the Senate dispatched both consuls, Gellius and Lentulus, each commanding full Roman legions. They first attacked Crixus near Mount Garganus. Outnumbered and outmatched, Crixus's force was annihilated, and he himself was killed. Spartacus, upon hearing this, allegedly sacrificed 300 Roman prisoners in honor of his fallen comrade, forcing them to fight to the death in a reversal of the games once forced upon slaves. The war escalated. Spartacus defeated Lentulus's legion in battle, and according to Appian, he then turned and crushed Gellius as well. The consular armies retreated to Rome in disgrace. Appian further describes Spartacus defeating both again at Picenum, while Plutarch instead records a separate victory over Gaius Cassius Longinus, governor of Cisalpine Gaul. Regardless of the exact sequence, Spartacus had beaten Rome's best forces repeatedly, and his army now numbered over 100,000. At one point, he destroyed surplus supplies, killed his prisoners, and marched toward Rome as if preparing for a direct assault. But he reconsidered. Instead, he captured Thurii in southern Italy and organized raids for bronze and iron to arm his men more effectively. The Senate now realized the gravity of the crisis. They turned to Marcus Licinius Crassus, a wealthy and ambitious senator, to crush the rebellion. Crassus raised 6 new legions at his own expense, supplementing the remnants of the consular forces. Determined to restore discipline, he revived the ancient punishment of decimation after one of his officers disobeyed orders and suffered defeat. Soldiers were divided into groups of 10, and one man in each group, chosen by lot, was executed by his comrades. Whether applied to hundreds or thousands, the effect was the same. Crassus instilled fear and discipline unmatched by previous commanders. Spartacus attempted to escape Italy by arranging passage with Cilician pirates to Sicily, hoping to ignite new revolts there. The pirates betrayed him, taking his payment but abandoning him without ships. Forced back into the far south, Spartacus retreated to the Rhegium Peninsula. Crassus responded by building a massive wall and trench across the isthmus, cutting the rebels off from supplies. Some broke through the fortifications and resumed raiding, but they were hunted down and slaughtered, 12,000 falling in battle. Roman observers noted almost none were killed fleeing. Nearly all had died facing the enemy. Spartacus himself still won a smaller victory against a Roman detachment, which emboldened his followers to demand a final showdown. The end came in 71 BCE, Pompey returned from Spain with his legions, while Lucullus landed with forces from the east. Crassus, eager to secure victory before rivals could claim credit, refused Spartacus's offers of negotiation. The two armies clashed in a decisive battle. Spartacus killed his own horse before the fighting began, declaring he would win many horses from Rome or die without need of one. He fought fiercely, cutting through centurions in a desperate attempt to reach Crassus himself. But he was overwhelmed, surrounded, and slain. His body was never recovered. Around 36,000 rebels were killed, and 6,000 captured survivors were crucified along the Appian Way. The road from Capua to Rome became lined with crosses, a brutal warning to all. Pompey intercepted and destroyed the last few thousand fugitives, then claimed that while Crassus had defeated the main army, he himself had extirpated the war. Rome rewarded him with a triumph, while Crassus received only an ovation. Pompey and Crassus reaped political benefit for having put down the rebellion. Both returned to Rome with their legions and refused to disband them, instead camping outside Rome. To restore prestige, Crassus used his wealth to host public feasts and fund the grain dole, and soon after, he allied with Pompey and Julius Caesar in the First Triumvirate. Spartacus, meanwhile, passed into legend. Though he died in defeat, his rebellion shook the Republic to its core. After the rebellion, Rome did not abolish slavery. It remained a cornerstone of the economy, but measures were taken to manage the slave population more carefully. As a result, Roman authorities encouraged slave owners to treat their slaves with more restraint to prevent further uprisings. Masters were increasingly discouraged from indiscriminate executions or excessive punishments, since fear-driven violence had been a direct cause of revolt. At the same time, manumission, the formal granting of freedom, became more systematized and accessible, allowing a controlled way for slaves to enter Roman society rather than seeking liberty through violence. Over time, Roman jurists introduced laws that limited abuse and established clearer rights for freedmen, meaning that although slavery remained central to Roman life, the status of slaves gradually included more safeguards than before the uprising of Spartacus. For that reason, Spartacus endured in memory, not as a defeated gladiator, but as a symbol of defiance against oppression. And here's a fun twist. I've included a mistake in this video. See if you can spot it and let me know in the comments below. Until next time, subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, because next we're going to uncover how Roman power reshaped the ancient world in Why is Titus's Empire the Most Devastating Moment in Jerusalem's History?